Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for coming. I have a lot of information on slides that your eyes are probably not going to be good enough to read, but there is a handout in your packet that, that summarizes what's on the slides, and you may want to get it out. If I'm really boring, you can just read this book. I do have a bit of show and tell, a couple of books I've authored lately, one of which is quite pertinent to today's talk. I just want to pass these around. So if you're really bored, you can just open up the book and hear my words there instead. What Christians need to know about artificial intelligence. I'm going to try to make a long story short. I don't know if I can make it short enough. And I'm not going to be telling you all the things you're already hearing. You already know about Christian values. What you all desperately need is to know what AI is and how it works, not just how to use it, but what it is, so that you'll be applying your Christian values to real technology rather than fiction or fantasy. This is a frustrating time to be in the AI field for me because people have so many misconceptions. I think it was Will Rogers who said, the trouble with the world isn't ignorance, it's that people know too many things that ain't so. Well, about 2/3 of what I hear about AI ain't so. You can imagine how I felt when a previously reliable Christian magazine arrived in my mailbox one day, Touchstone magazine, and the headline story was AI Demonic. And the author of an article, who was proudly ignorant of technology, said it sounded to him like a demon trying to express itself when he used a chatbot. Well, if you use your stereo to play the soundtrack of a horror movie, you can get demonic sounding things out of that too. This is a machine. And in particular, what I have against Touchstone is they had an article by someone with admittedly no knowledge of the technology at all, who was just looking at it from outside and responding superstitiously. What is artificial intelligence? Well, it's the use of computers to do human-like intellectual tasks. Isn't that the only thing computers ever were for? I mean, they installed them in banks to do the arithmetic back in the 1950s. Yes, offloading human intellectual work to a machine. And there was talk about thinking machines back in the 1950s and whether they were going to take over the world and start scheming against us. A book called Giant Brains, 1949, is amusing to look at. That long ago. More recently, artificial intelligence is the study of human thinking by computer modeling and the devising of ways to use computers to do things where we have to study how humans think in order to get the computer to do something. AI has been a field of study since 1955 and has been there's been an AI research group at the University of Georgia since 1984. I think there were people dabbling in it before that. This is, in short, not just the new developments called generative AI that became prominent in 2022 and 2023. And I'm going to tell you what the difference is between the older and the newer approaches. Classic AI includes robotics, automated reasoning. There's robotics in your printer, by the way. It picks up pieces of paper and handles them and so forth. Automated reasoning, natural language processing and translation, computer vision, all these other things. People are panicking about the wrong things. There is a lot of public panic going on right now about AI. I know it because it means, among other things, the job market for consulting in my area is just sort of frozen, as nobody wants to do anything except stand there like a deer in the headlights. Progress in the software industry has halted, as far as I can tell. Nobody's doing anything new now because they all have misconceptions that AI is either going to do it all for them or make it impossible or something. Now there is competitive manipulated panic. Do any of you, well, no, you're not old enough. In the early 1970s, if you were an astute student of American popular culture, you may know that in around 1971, we were all being told we were about to be killed in a nuclear war, or starved in an environmental catastrophe, or maybe killed in a race riot or something. There were a couple of other things that could go wrong, but you were just supposed to believe that you were doomed in short order in the early 1970s. People competed to show how worried they were. And it was a good excuse for neglecting your responsibilities. There's competitive panic going on right now. People are trying to show the world how panicked they are and use that as an excuse for neglecting responsibilities. I also say manipulated panic. There are people who have vast amounts of money staked on getting you to do certain things and believe certain things relating to AI software. In particular, the belief that all software now needs to include generative AI so that it pays subscriptions to and relies on servers run by just a few big companies. That is what a few billionaires and people at immediate risk of losing billions are wanting, and it's not what we have to actually do. We are not about to have conscious computers. We just aren't. There is no known technical path toward making computers conscious. If computers are going to have human-like consciousness, how are they going to do it? Nobody ever has an answer for that for me. You know, it's sort of like asking people to name more than 2 scientists who were persecuted by the church during the Renaissance. Everybody names 2 and then they stop. There weren't many. There is not a risk of computers becoming conscious right now. There is not a risk of robots running amok and taking over. Now, there are hazards from people giving unreliable automated systems control over important things and making mistakes, but I blame the humans there. You have an unreliable machine, you let it run automatically, autonomously, it goes wrong. It's like having a self-propelled lawnmower and just letting go of it and seeing where it goes or something. We are not going to have massive elimination of jobs and labor. We are having bad business decisions being made on a grand scale in the short term by people under the spell of misconceptions, and we are going to have changes in the way everybody does their work. Well, the steam engine did that too. So did the taming of fire. So did a lot of other things. And we're not all starving because steam engines put us all out of work. All right, we are having problems with people imagining that computers are human-like when they are not. This is the big problem. Some people cannot resist believing that a chatbot is conscious. People not realizing that AI, any type of AI involving machine learning, is inherently unreliable. The results are approximate and probable, not certain. That can be extremely useful if they are results you could not otherwise get at all, like a weather forecast. You know there's some unreliability, but it's better to have a probable weather forecast than none at all. Same with the results of AI computations. And there are people using AI to do foolish or malicious things like make fake videos and pictures of other people and so forth, as if the law could not reach to a person who is using a computer. What do we need as a society? We need for people to get used to AI the way they got used to things like movie special effects. I saw up there on that screen that train ran over somebody. No, you didn't see a train run over somebody. You saw an image of a train running over somebody. People had to get used to movies and TV. Well, they need to get used to AI now. Things that look realistic may not be the fruit of the process that would have been needed to make them 10 years ago. And again, I think about the fact that if you had enough money, you could fake things then. Remember President Kennedy and Forrest Gump and things like that? With enough money, enough actors and everything, they could make realistic images of things that never happened. They still can. And it's now much easier, which means much cheaper, which means that much more foolish and less accountable people are doing it. People need to have some concept of how AI works, not just how to use it. You don't need a 2-week short course on how to use AI tools unless you particularly want to use the tools, which maybe you do. They are useful. What you need is a conceptual understanding of what machine learning is and why it's doing the things that it's doing, and what it can be relied on and not relied on for. We need an emphasis on measuring and controlling the inherent unreliability, and if you are an engineer, that is a very familiar concept. Everything in the world is unreliable. We need to know how unreliable it is. These beams that are holding up this building could break. The chance of that is very, very slim, and lots of testing has been done to make sure of that. AI systems right now are unreliable, and people often use them with no testing to find out how much they can be relied on. That's bad engineering. We need legal liability for the things that people do with AI. The legal system of the world hasn't disappeared, even if people with new toys seem to think they are somehow beyond it. We had this with the internet. Do you remember the early days of internet harassment when people said, there are no laws in cyberspace? To which I would say, well, go to cyberspace then. Right now I see you sitting in Georgia, and there are certainly laws in Georgia. I actually had that conversation with undergraduates more than once in the mid-90s. We probably need some new laws to ban uses that are obviously wrong and which are technically illegal now, but the laws need to be clearer and more direct about situations that come up often. We need help for people who have been deluded or exploited. ChatGPT, I believe 4, was very good at pretending to be a lover or romantic companion, and people fell in love with it and were heartbroken when the model changed and lost some of its memory, and are even more heartbroken now that that capability has apparently been discontinued. These people actually are going to need counseling, need wise advice from their fellow humans. If you're a counselor or a pastor, look for those. Now, the key point that I have for you is you are never again going to live in a world in which modern generative AI has not been invented. That is just not an option. You can't wind back the clock. AI technology is very useful, not an inherently evil or unduly dangerous thing, although it certainly can be misused. And I compare it to the automobile. Can cars do destructive things? Can cars facilitate crimes? Certainly. Do we ban them? No. Now, there are things you need to know, even if you are not technically inclined, just as there are things you need to know about an automobile, even if you are not technically inclined. You need to know something about what it is, what it can do, what it requires, what can prevent it from doing what it does. So let's hang on and get technical briefly. Most modern AI uses a software technique called machine learning. That means programming a computer by giving it data to find patterns in, data to match, rather than by giving it instructions. Until now, we programmed computers by telling them step by step what to do. With machine learning, you control a computer by giving it data to learn from, and by learn, I do not mean conscious learning. I mean finding and recording patterns and being able to recognize them. The results are probable and approximate, not 100% predictable. That's the big thing. That's the really big thing. The results of machine learning are probable, not certain. Let's make a distinction between conventional software, which is computer programming that you know about, computers programmed by giving them instructions, and they do exactly what those instructions do. So if the instructions are correct, the computer is 100% reliable. There's rule-based AI, which actually is the larger part of AI, though not the new part, and that can be described as conventional software tackling human intellectual tasks. Computer programs that play chess were an early challenge. Computer programs that do all sorts of things by following rules. David Mustard was telling me about a computer program that figures out the tax formalities for wherever you sell something all over the world, state by state, county by county. That's an example of rule-based AI, assuming I've grasped what it is. Yes, okay. Contrast those with machine learning, which is programming a computer with data, not instructions, by having it find patterns. Machine learning often uses neural networks, which I will get to. That's a type of machine learning algorithm. It is not a brain culture in a tissue culture dish or anything like that. It's actually a computation. Machine learning can be classificatory, that is, to identify and recognize inputs. Once it's seen a lot of examples of something, it can then recognize more examples and tell you whether they're the same thing or not, or make predictions from them. Recognizing stock trends, for instance. Now, if you invest in the stock market, you're competing against all the machines that are doing that, and yours might not be better than theirs, but for a while, people made money that way, and now you're a fool if you don't use the best analytic techniques available, because other people are. Then that's classificatory machine learning. See lots of data, learn how it should be classified, see more data, and make a judgment about the data, like what it indicates, what it is an example of, which of the earlier data sets it resembles, the stocks that went up or the stocks that went down, and so forth. Generative machine learning is what's really new. And generative means I give you some input and you make more of the same. In particular, I give you trillions of words of English text. You find all the patterns in them. I then give you the beginning of an English text and you continue it, or you paraphrase it, or something. That's generative AI. That's what made the headlines about 3 years ago. Big points here. Use machine, and by the way, this is not a systematic academic talk on AI. I'm just addressing points on which there are likely to be misconceptions. If you want to find out the undisputed part, look at any reliable source. But the things about which there are likely to be misconceptions or mistakes. Big point about machine learning. Use machine learning when it is okay to be right 90 or 95% of the time. There are lots of things where being 90% likely to be right is a lot better than not having any prediction at all. That's where you use machine learning. Machine learning is extremely useful. Don't use it when certainty is needed. Do test it to see how reliably it's doing what you need. If you're using a chatbot to answer questions, see how well it answers questions about an area that you're expert in. You may go away disappointed and inclined to be skeptical of what it says about anything else. The other thing, you keep hearing this word neural net. A neural net is not a realistic model of a brain. The word neural in there tends to bamboozle people. They tend to think, oh, it's just like a brain. It must be thinking just like a brain. No, it's distantly modeled on the visual system of a frog. It's a way of connecting together numbers as if they were the activations of neurons in a piece of brain tissue, and then passing along the values from one to the next with appropriate adjustments, weights, coefficients, activation functions, and so forth. Neural does not mean that they've cracked how the brain works and we are now making machines do exactly what brains do. It just doesn't mean that. Now, new in 2022, 2023, chatbots, programs that carry on a conversation. There have actually been programs that carry on conversations for a long time. You may remember the game Adventure, or Zork, for instance, which is a 1970s classic, or Eliza, 1965. But chatbots carry on much more realistic open-ended conversations than anything before, and they are based on large language models, LLMs. An LLM is a huge table of how words are used in context, and it's created by digesting trillions of words of English language text. Chatbots are very good at paraphrasing, revising, and summarizing texts, as you might guess. They can answer questions from texts. They can even generate computer programs. I've been doing a lot of that lately. It has already looked at all those pages on Stack Overflow and everywhere where people talk about a programming problem. So I can actually get chatbots to generate computer programs that have only a few bugs in them, which is a lot quicker than writing it myself with only a few bugs in it and then tracking everything down. I don't have to go out and look up, for instance, how do you do the JavaScript to save a checkbox in a cookie. It finds these things. It produces examples. It's great help programming things that other people have programmed a lot. It's no help at all with what I love doing, which is creating original algorithms. You know, the story of my life. Dr. Cummington, where do you get that algorithm? Well, I made it up. You can do that? Okay, computer science is like that. But what then is an agent? An agent is like a chatbot, except instead of generating a series of words, it's generating actions. It is actually going to do things for you, like you can say, book me a hotel room in Paris, and it will. And you'll see the price is a little low, and you find out it's Paris, Texas. Now, that's a typical mistake, but seriously, they work right enough of the time to be very helpful. They don't work right enough of the time to trust your life or even your large budget to without human approval of the step. Humans in the loop is the catchphrase there. Human beings need to be approving things that could be damaging if they were mistakes. Pitfalls with chatbots. Thinking they have human-like consciousness because they talk like humans. Some people cannot stay out of that trap. The other pitfall is thinking they are conventional software and that they are doing what they were programmed to do. Well, no, they're following patterns in their training data. They're not following instructions. And that means it's not deterministic, not predictable. It's only approximate. A pitfall is thinking that they have the precision and reliability of conventional software. Have you ever seen anybody on social media answer a question by saying, well, I asked ChatGPT and here's what it said? ChatGPT, well, now chatbots are often linked to web searches and will go out and look at reliable sources, but even then the paraphrases they perform are not perfectly truth-preserving. They may summarize something by saying something a little different from what it said. Fundamentally, a chatbot doesn't tell you the correct answer. It tells you what the answer would look like. It's very convincing because it writes perfectly normal text. And by the way, as a teacher, you cannot use software to detect whether something was written by AI. This is a hill I will die on almost. It is impossible in principle to implement that type of AI detection. If it works by temporary good luck, where there is a temporary difference in style between one writer and the thing in the training set that that person's writing came closest to matching, but only by accident. The reason is the stylometric statistical properties of a text are exactly what generative AI replicates perfectly. That's the only thing it replicates perfectly. Okay, I've got to speed up. This long story is very long. Another pitfall is thinking they have superhuman intelligence and wisdom. People want to imagine, oh, it's artificial intelligence. It's smarter than me. Well, depending on the value of me in that sentence, I suppose it could be, but not us. Machine learning systems act like the average of what they were trained on, not the best of what they were trained on, and certainly not better than the best of what they were trained on. If you want perfection, you want conventional software where programmers have worked out a way to calculate something with perfect accuracy. Okay, thinking that ethics doesn't apply to a new toy. Haven't we seen that before, like with the internet? Some people just lose all their common sense when they have a new toy, believing the hype. There are billionaires with fortunes on the line whose dream is for all software to rely on LLMs that are hosted on their servers and all the software in the world to pay subscriptions to them. Unfortunately for them, you can run LLMs locally on your own PC. I do it regularly. They're not as big, not as good, but they're getting there. With a bigger PC, I could do more. The Swiss government is releasing, free of charge for free use by everybody, a large multilingual LLM. This is basically to keep the United States from dominating the field totally. Free in Switzerland, free from Switzerland. Okay, specifically Christian concerns. Don't worry, I'm getting close to the end. Ethical use of AI in general, just like ethical use of any technology, is something we should have insights and careful thoughts about. There are specifically Christian moral issues such as pornography. Generative AI is an amazingly effective pornography generator and can make pornography out of real pictures of real people. And legal constraints need to be enforced there. There are people who want to use AI as a spiritual advisor. And it can talk like anything it has read about, good or evil. So we may have a new kind of idolatry where people think that a generative AI system is some kind of supernatural being that they are inclined to worship. Now, that is not the same as the generative AI being a demon, as that first author said. It's more that the generative AI is like an idol. It's an inanimate object that doesn't have human-like consciousness, but people want to pretend idolatrously that it does. Couple of metaphysical points. Human-like or superhuman consciousness has not emerged in AI, and only a small part of the AI research community thinks it's possible. There is no known technical path to it. It has become clear that large language models are not it. The dream 3 years ago for some people was you feed all the known human written text in the world into it, you've got a machine that contains all human knowledge, human consciousness will emerge. No, it didn't happen. The entire industry has been busy manually improving the LLMs because they didn't become superhuman on their own. If we ever do transplant consciousness into a machine, and I do not believe that we will, but if it does happen, we will have done it with God's materials. We are not creators, we are transplanters. Just as you can transplant my voice into a tape recorder, and that doesn't mean you created it. But I am very skeptical about that. Okay, for more information, look at the bottom of your handout. There is an excellent video course called Making Friends with Machine Learning by Cassie Kozyrkov. I have no idea if she's a Christian. This is a technical course. I know she has good sense and also an archaic British accent that must be heard and enjoyed.